Hi, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of the Women's Growth Series. I'm Corey Meredith. I am the Digital Marketing Manager at AIME, and I am so excited to be joined by the one and only Ashley Miller today, who is our Business Development Manager at GTG Financial. Thank you, Ashley, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I feel like I'm just having a straight conversation with a friend at this point. This will be fun.
I know, this is easy.
This is so easy. I love these conversations anyway, because that's really the essence of them. They're just free-flowing, fun conversations. But today we're going to focus on personality assessments, what they are, why they're important, and how we can kind of implement them into our business. So it's something that you do and take pretty seriously at GTG. So why don't you dive in and just tell me what they are in general?
Yeah, so I use two, and I use them for different functions. I use the DISC, which I don't think is a foreign terminology to anyone in our business. I use that in hiring. So anytime I'm identifying candidates for a specific role, it's required that we have them take a DISC test. And I'll explain why. But then in management, I use what's called the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is nothing new, but it doesn't have the popularity the DISC does, but it's starting to gain traction. People are starting to research it a bit more. We're starting to find a lot more information on the study of the Enneagram and how to use it properly. So I'll use the DISC when it comes to hiring, and I use the Enneagram when it comes to like leading a team, managing the team, and just overall, structure of how we want the company culture to function. So those are the two that I use.
What are like the major differences of them? Why do you use the DISC for hiring and the Enneagram for leadership?
So the DISC they're both personality assessments, but the Enneagram dives a bit deeper into the intricacies of who we are, why we tick, why we think the way that we do. And the DISC is more of a tool of what motivates each employee. So we're all motivated differently. We all communicate differently. What we need out of our job place might not be the same. What I need might not be the same as what you need, might not be the same as what the next person needs. And so it really breaks down who you are at your core and what motivates you the most. So with the DISC, you have the four different components of it is the D, the I, the S, and the C. And that's D for dominant, I for influencer, S is for steady, and C is your compliance. Typically, salespeople fall within the D and the I, and your processors, your LOA, your support staff fall within the S and the C. So I use that up front because if we're advertising for a job and say it's for a processing position, someone who's high on that D on the DISC scale is not going to thrive in a position where the S and the C's typically thrive. And it's not meant to break out, what you're not good at, but it's meant to show you where your strengths are and then where some weaknesses are that you can improve on. So we don't ever want to put anyone in a role that they're not going to thrive. I think a lot of the times the breakdown in company culture is when people are feeling like they're not being heard, they're not being seen, they're not in a role that's fulfilling them. So it's important to us that we hone in on that and that we're putting people in roles where they are going to succeed based on their personality makeup. We can't change that about ourselves, but we can learn what motivates people differently. So I use it as a communication tool too. So someone who's a DISC, these are your dominant traits people. They like to get straight to the point, right down to business. They don't want to chit chat. Your high I's, I'm a high I on the DISC. That's what's called the influencer. And I hate to use that term, but that's what the I means on the DISC. We're your talkative people. We like to be warmed up a little bit with conversation before we get right into, the nitty gritty business details. And then your S and your C's, that's your very steady, task focused minded people. They like predictability. They like things to be, black and white. They don't necessarily love to be in positions of making decisions and stuff. And so that's where your support roles come in and they thrive in those roles. So it allows you to approach every person uniquely. I cannot have a conversation with someone who's a D the same that I would with someone who's an S or a C. It's just not going to be productive for anyone. So for us, we're huge on company culture. We're huge on communication. And that really helps us hone in on each individual and what their needs are.
Yeah. And that kind of goes beyond to just the hiring process. It seems like it would just help communication in general, whether you're talking to a referral partner or you're talking to a borrower or anybody within that whole pipeline of your open to close loan. How am I going to adjust my communication to fit their personality trait? And not saying you throw them through the DISC training, but kind of picking up on their nuances.
Yeah. And as you study it more, you get good at picking up on those things. So I can tell, traits of that this person's a D. They don't want to hear me talk about, my children and my dog and what I did over the weekend. We just want to go right into business. They want the details. They're already on to the next thing. So you have to be quick and concise with them. And, the golden rule teaches us that we treat people how we would want to be treated, right? But with the DISC, you treat them how they want to be treated. So I have to really learn each personality trait. So when I go into a conversation, like you said, it goes beyond the workplace with referral partners, with, anyone that we come in contact with in our business to be effective. I have to know how they want me to communicate to them. And so that it breaks down a lot of the walls of miscommunication too, I think, with people. As we know, we grow our businesses and things like that. A lot of the roadblocks that we hit boil down to communication. So when you can bust that wall down and you have a better understanding of, what makes Corey, what makes Ashley, it's way more effective.
Yeah, definitely helps with the essence of being seen and heard, like you said that too. And you want to put somebody in a role where they are thriving. So kind of bringing it back into the hiring process. When did you guys start implementing this at GTG, and how successful has it been just from what you've seen?
So we started using a company called Wise Hire, and they actually have a built-in disc in their application process. So when we have an applicant, they are asked to take that up front. And it's a condensed version of what you would get on, Tony Robbins' website or any other website that you could go and take a much larger version of the disc test, but it's still pretty on point. And when we really started to look at that, and we really started to dial in on, this person applied for this role, but their personality traits are not showing that this would be something that they would thrive in. We got it wrong at first. When we started expanding quickly, we started just hiring people and putting them in roles. And then we learned, fast that they're not going to do well over here. And it's not that they're a bad employee. Sometimes we tend to want to jump to like, well, they're just incompetent, or they're not good, or they're not going to make it in this business. Like that's not true. They're just in a role that they're not necessarily thriving. And so we approach everything with, we have a need to hire. If you come in and you start working for us, but this role is not working for you, we're not just going to let you go. We're going to figure out what it is that you're going to thrive in, and then we'll move you into these different roles. And so when we really leaned into the disc and started understanding all the candidates that we were hiring, we were able to put them in positions that they were happy in, and that they wanted to learn more about, and that they wanted to like really lean into and take that on. Prior to all of that, it was kind of just, if someone said they would be good at sales, they'd be good at sales. Why not put them in a sales job? But it's really not that easy.
Yeah, definitely. And you're setting them up for success at the end of the day. That's kind of the common theme, it seems like, so far. But even so, like, just getting to know them as a person, getting to understand what they want. Oftentimes, a lot of people from the outside, right? Because we always preach about hiring people with no experience and training them and building them up and bringing them into the channel. Like, they don't know what they're going to be good at. They don't know what they like because they've never done it before. So right. I think a lot of the times too, these employees or potential employees would feel valued more if you were like, I don't think you're a good fit here, but you might be a good fit here. And it kind of sets you off on the right foot to begin that relationship with too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So when we're talking about these assessments and all this fun stuff, are there some specific traits that you look for? You said that at this point, you kind of know like who would fit where and who would fit where. So when you're hiring for a specific role, are there certain traits that you're looking for right off the bat, in a sense, to fill X, Y, and Z role?
Yeah. So as it pertains to the disc, if we're hiring for a support role, if it's an LOA or if it's a processor, the S and the C's are what we want to see the strengths in. And everyone's going to have a profile on the disc. You're going to be a little bit of a D, a little bit of an I, but where are your strengths? Where do they lie? So when we're looking at those roles, that's what I want to see for that person that's coming into that job, because that's their natural state, right? They're naturally going to be more detail oriented. They're naturally going to be more focused on the task at hand. Whereas I's like me, I can get talking, and the next thing you know, I'm completely off topic and I've lost my focus on what it is that I'm doing. Your D's too, they're very, very dominant, and they like to be in power positions and assertive. And that's why a lot of the salespeople make great, the profile of a D is great for a salesperson, because they're just naturally, their inclination is to go to that power play, that power position. You can also move out of any of these profiles on the disc. So I'm a high I, but when I stepped into the management role at GTG, I redisced myself a few weeks ago, and my D is starting to go a lot higher. And that's because I had to adapt to the role that I'm in. And so you start to like take on these traits, and you can grow out of the disc. And so it's important that if you have a team and you're running a team based off these personality traits, and you're using this every day in business, you want to disc them. I would say maybe yearly, every 2 years, and just see how they're growing through the disc too. And you can use it as a coaching tool too. If you dive in deep and stuff and you can hone in on where their strengths are. And if say, they want to move into a different role, well, here's these things that we need to work on, that you need to become comfortable with every single day in order to thrive in that role that you want to move into. So we do it often. I send it out to my team, probably once every couple of months. I'll send it out with a little blurb of, why the disc is so important and why y'all should take it and why you should continue to take it. So when we're constantly practicing too, I'm always studying it myself. I'm no expert in any of this. It's just something that we do every single day. But self-awareness for myself too is how I can be an effective leader also. So it's important for me to dive into it as well.
Yeah. I mean, to build off of that too, my follow-up question was going to be, why do you think it's important that we know our own personality traits? I mean, you kind of hit on it, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, and so this is where too I think the Enneagram starts to come into play a bit more, because that dives a lot deeper into just the different nuances and intricacies of each different personality trait. There's 9 on the Enneagram, and like same as a disc, we all fall into all 9 of those. But where are your strengths? So with that, for me, I have to understand who I am before I'm going to effectively lead, because I cannot approach every situation like a one size fits all. And naturally, we tend to want to communicate with people how we'd want to be communicated with. It's that whole golden rule I mentioned earlier, but that's not effective. And people don't feel seen, they don't feel heard. So I have to understand, when I'm going into a meeting, what makes me feel a certain way about this meeting, where do my strengths lie and my weaknesses lie when I'm communicating with other people. So for me to be self-aware is huge. For the management team to be self-aware of what their own Enneagram style is huge. And then we can apply that to our team as well.
Yeah, definitely. And when you say that you have, your client or people that you work with take these yearly, pretty often, whatever that looks like. So when there's a leadership position available, do you kind of take those yearly assessments into play to know when to quiz them for the Enneagram for that leadership role? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and yeah, it does. It does. We haven't really had the opportunity to expand the leadership team just yet. There's 4 of us, and we actually just added the 4th early this year. But you want to have balance on your leadership team. You can't have a whole team of people that are Ds or people that are 3s on the Enneagram. So I'm a 3. Glenn Groves, he's the CEO. He's a 5. Our ops manager, he's a 1. And we're all different on the disc too. So yeah, it's important that you don't get so top heavy with all these same personality traits, because then no one's communicating effectively. We kind of have to play good cop, bad cop with each other. Sometimes we have to bring a different perspective to a certain situation, or how we're going to approach one of our employees, or how we communicate with people. So when we did hire our 4th person, we already knew he was coming on board. I mean, he's been a longtime friend of ours, so he was already coming on board, but we had to do that. And it just gave us a deeper understanding of how to work as a team together. So it's not necessarily I'm trying to dissect him and his personality and make sure that he's a good fit, but it's how can the 4 of us now cohesively work as a team. If we're not cohesive, if we're not, one unit, then everything underneath this is going to crumble. So it's important for us to stay strong. But as we move forward, if we do expand the leadership team, then yeah, absolutely, that would be something that we would rely heavily on.
Now, do you think that it would be impactful, good or bad, to have your whole sales team, for example, made up of Ds on the disc? Or do you think that some of that versatility should come into play on a team as well? Now, this might be a question for a larger brokerage who has staffing up a bit more, but do you think it would be good or bad if they were all kind of in the same category or have the same strengths?
I think if we look at it, so I think that would apply more so if I have, a loan officer running a branch and they have their own support. So the way that we're set up is we have our corporate office, and then we actually have branches, up and down California, and some of them have a larger support team than others. As a branch manager, yes, I think so. As for me, having a whole team of high D salespeople, I don't know that it would necessarily, I don't know that I would necessarily need to balance that out, because I look at those as individual little teams, right? Not one large team like we're running the corporate office and we're a large cohesive team. High Ds make great loan officers. So if I had all high Ds, perfect. And, I can handle that. Like I just have to know how to effectively manage them. We've got a mix. We have a mix of Ds and Is. And when we get on sales calls, I can pick out, which ones are the Ds and the Is, just based on, the conversation or, where their head's at and stuff like that. And that's a great question. I hadn't really thought about that. I don't know that I would prefer it to be a mix. I think as long as I knew what the personalities were, I could manage that just fine.
Yeah. And I think that you touched on something great just previously too, in the fact that, you need to have that strong base to have that really strong team. So that leadership is pretty much the essence of how the entire team is going to reflect you guys based off of there. So having those different opinions come in, having those different voices and those different, your strengths and weaknesses is always an asset in providing the best options for all team members who are kind of made up of all of these different strengths and weaknesses throughout, regardless of their position. So good insight there. But moving on, have you seen productivity increase after implementing this strategy?
I have, in the sense that our people are happy. They're really happy, and happy people work harder. They work smarter. They want to. I think the one thing, we do a lot of things great at GTG, but we have the culture down pat, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are so focused on communication. We're so focused on understanding what our employees' needs are. I can't just tell someone how they feel, right? Like that's like I can't do that. I can't approach every meeting that I have. If I'm doing a yearly assessment, I'm blanking on the word, a yearly assessment with one of my employees, I can't approach, one the same that I would the other. People want to feel valued. They want to feel like you value them and that you see them and that you honor who they are as a person. So yeah, I think that we overall, it's just a great foundation to build on a culture that people want to come work with us. They don't want to leave us. They're happy there. And so yeah, so I think happy employees make great employees. I think happy employees make a lot of, good productivity. So I would say, yeah, it has made a difference.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. If you're not happy in the role that you're doing, especially if it's not fitting with your personality trait, like if I got put in a loan officer position, I grace you all because that's just not who I am. Like I would not be happy in that position, not for any other reason besides I don't think I'm more of a dominant person. I like the creative side of things. So it's just understanding again who you are and who you're identifying for these roles. I'm fully capable. You guys are fully capable. But I also think too, as small broker owners, wearing those different hats and kind of adjusting to what those skills are. And you even touched upon it. You said, your D kind of skyrocketed when you went in this managerial role. Yeah. And it's understanding who you're working with, but also who you're talking to. And you can kind of adapt and shift based off of that conversation.
Yeah. And for our loan officers, to go back to the your question about productivity, if they study it and they can apply it to their referral partners too, and how you set meetings with your referral partners, how you approach your referral partners, that in itself too is going to increase productivity, because then you're going to start connecting with them better and they're going to start sending you more business. You're going to be able to sell better. So it has a ton of potential on the disc, and there's so much that you can really dive in and do with it. Ultimately, I think communication is the core of everything. And so if you can communicate effectively, I think right there, that's the secret sauce, right? Like that's going to get you, more deals, happier employees, happier referral partners. And then just overall, you're in a position where you want to be in that position and you're happy to do that every single day. We all know what it feels like to go to a job that you don't love to do every single day at all. And, to be happy in those roles. And a lot of that stems from communication and how effectively you are communicating with your peers and your management team. And so that's the biggest reason why we use it.
Yeah. And I think, that's also important too, because this industry is so fast paced, right? And we work so hard. You guys never shut off, like ever, which is amazing. But at the same time, like if you're not happy in the role that you're in, you're going to get drained so quickly. So kind of understanding that value, where you fit as part of the puzzle piece in the larger ecosystem of the operation is super important just from the ground up. So to any brokers who are wanting to hire, obviously personality assessments are a great thing to get started with, but how can they get their foot in the door with giving this to their potential employees?
Yeah, so Tony Robbins has a free DISC assessment online. If you go to TonyRobbins.com, you can even Google it, Tony Robbins DISC, and it'll pull up a link to do the free assessment online. And send it to your employees. Ask them to take it and forward you the results. And then you can go through it and study. And it's kind of a fun team building exercise too, to sit down with them one-on-one and go through it. And then explain yours to them as well. You're not here just to tell them what their personality traits are. Let them know what yours are too. So before we started using WiseHire that sends it with it, I would just link people and I would ask them, please take this. I want your results back by, Wednesday at noon, please. And I think people by nature, like we're curious. human beings are very curious. People want to know, a little bit more insight on who they are. So the Tony Robbins one is my go-to resource for that. And then the Enneagram, there's a website called the Enneagram Institute, and Enneagram is spelled Enneagram. It can be a little bit like a tongue twister trying to spell that one out. But the Enneagram Institute, and it's structured the same way as the DISC. You go on, there's no right or wrong answers, but it structures the questions, in a way that you pick the best answer to fit yourself, and then it will give you your results at the end. And so I would do that the same thing. I would send that to my team and ask them to take it. That's how my whole team did it. I sent the link out to everyone and asked them to do it. And then again, one by one, we would sit down and we would talk about the different personality traits. And, I'd ask questions too about their results. How do you feel about this? Like, what do you think about that? Let's talk about it. And then you can do it on a much larger scale too. You can get the whole office together. We can all sit down and go around the room and talk about who we are at our core. It helps employees work together too, if they have a better understanding of who they are. So anyone who's getting started in that, I would say, you don't even have to wait until you hire someone to send these things out. Send it to your current team now. And it's not meant to tell you, perhaps this person's not doing well in this role. If they are, leave them there. But now you can figure out, maybe strengths that you have not been nurturing, maybe strengths they haven't been cultivating within themselves too. And you can figure out some areas to improve on.
At the end of the day too, it kind of just goes back to that company culture, right? Like you're wanting to get to know more about your employees, right? And like you said, everyone wants to know more about themselves. I want to take it now. Like, it seems fun. It's like a fun team building experience, but it's true. Like, creating that value and letting them know that they're being heard and seen and cared for is super impactful just in itself. And it's kind of a win-win at the end of the day. You learn more about their positive skill sets. They learn more about themselves and feel valued. So I think that's awesome. And like I said, I think it's fun.
It's a lot of fun. And it's fun, like, I find myself, so Glenn Groves and I are really into it together. And when we find ourselves, like, we'll sit down with someone, we're like, what do you think? What do you think they are? Like a 4, or a 6, like, and, we'll sit down and we'll go through that. And it's just, it's interesting too. And when you can learn even more about yourself, I think that's where you can start effectively leading even better. If I know who I am, I can effectively lead. So I'm constantly in the pursuit of that.
Yeah. Know who you are and know who you're not, right? So who can help fill those voids for you to make you a better leader, to make your company, even more streamlined. Not saying that anyone needs to revamp their entire business, but why not build on it or make it better?
Right? We all have areas to improve. So like I said, have your current employees take it. It's not meant to, you're not going to fire anyone over it. You're not going to, move anyone out of a role if they're doing well in, but we all have areas to improve on. We all do. And it's a great tool to the DISC and the Enneagram. The DISC more so, I think, is the coaching tool. The Enneagram is more the personality tool, and how you can communicate better with your team. But for the DISC itself, have them take that and then sit down and go through it together and stuff. And it's very enlightening.
Yeah, definitely. And you can always play the little internal game. Well, I think they're fitting here, right? You're right.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
Anything else you have to share for today?
I could deep dive into this stuff all day long. If anyone wants to know more about it, y'all, please feel free to message me. It's stuff I love to talk about. And even things that I haven't learned yet. If someone has some insight from me too, I'd love to hear more on how it's worked for someone else. But no, you just got to get your hands dirty, dive in. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but once you start, it's just like anything. You start to research it a little bit, things start to click and make sense. And it's really cool. It's really fun. If anyone wants any resources, please message me and I will link you to everything that I use. I follow a bunch of Instagram pages that are great, and they give you quick little, snippets on like, a certain personality trait on the DISC or a certain personality trait on the Enneagram. Those are super easy to follow, and I'd be happy to share those with anyone. I don't know them on the top of my head. I'd have to go search. Otherwise, I would tell you what they are. But you can message me anytime. I'm always, love to talk about this stuff. I can talk about it for hours.
Perfect. That's so fun. And if anyone took the DISC test, let us know what your scores are in the comments. We'll compare. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And were you shocked too? I was not surprised when I took it to find out that I was a high I, like 99% the first time I took it. I was like, well, that makes sense. I'm not surprised by that. I was a little surprised that my D got higher. Just in the sense that I never thought of myself as that dominant personality. Yep. So it's cool, so yeah, like you said, Corey, drop it in the comments. Let's see who you are. And if it surprised you, if there was anything that you didn't see coming.
Yeah. Or if you do it, let us know, what you're looking for, what your personal stories are too. Cause it's always fun to kind of see it act out in person, see what happens. Cool. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for being here. This was fun. Personality assessments are fun. And it's, again, at the end of the day, a way to team builds, to create a better company culture and a stronger team overall, starting at the very base of it with yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.